Look, I am not saying the Galactic Institute of Advanced Sciences was the most pretentious establishment in the entire Andromeda sector, but let me put it this way. If your species had not produced at least 3 notable physicists, 2 warp theorists or 1 renowned xenobiologist, you were not getting through those doors. Period. End of discussion. The waiting list stretched longer than a Vorthian trade route, and the acceptance rate, 0.03%. Yes, you heard that right. 0.03. So naturally, when I, Vectron of the Tharnax Prime Colony, received my acceptance letter, I may have strutted around my hive cluster for approximately 6 weeks straight. My thorax plates practically gleamed with pride. My mandibles clicked with satisfaction at every opportunity. The Institute was not just a school, it was the school, the place where the brightest minds across 400 species came to prove they were in fact as brilliant as they believed themselves to be. The campus itself was a masterpiece of architectural excess. Floating platforms connected by energy bridges, crystalline towers that shifted colors based on the ambient stellar radiation, gardens featuring flora from 70 different worlds, all carefully maintained in their own atmospheric bubbles. The whole place screamed, "Look at how advanced we are. Look at how much better we are than everyone else." And honestly, we ate it up, every single one of us. The social hierarchy at the Institute was, shall we say, firmly established. At the top sat the Korvaxians, those smug telepathic scholars who loved reminding everyone they could read surface thoughts. Just below them were the Yalthrin, with their 4 brains, yes, 4, which they mentioned roughly every 12 minutes. Then came species like mine, the Tharnax, physically imposing, intellectually capable, and possessing just enough arrogance to make things interesting. Below us were the Quillari, the Brenth, the Myvesh, all decent enough, all perfectly aware of where they stood in the pecking order. Then, 1 rotation cycle into the academic year, she arrived. Cassidy Vale. Human. Female juvenile specimen, or as they apparently called it, a girl. Now, humans were, how do I put this delicately, a bit of a joke in the galactic community. Oh sure, they had achieved faster than light travel, they had a seat on the Galactic Council, the minor one in the back, and they had even contributed some mildly interesting research on quantum fluctuations or whatever. But come on, they were tiny, squishy, fragile-looking things from a backwater planet they called Earth, located in the unfashionable end of the Orion Arm. Their homeworld was barely classified as a garden world, maybe a 7.2 on the habitability index, nothing special. When Cassidy walked into advanced xenobiology class that first day, I will admit, I stared. We all did. She stood maybe 1.4 meters tall, maximum. Her skin was this pale peachy color that looked like it would bruise if you breathed on it too hard. No natural armor plating, no chitinous exoskeleton, no scales, no protective dermal layer of any kind that I could detect, just soft, vulnerable flesh, covered by some kind of synthetic fabric garment. Her head was topped with this brownish fiber growth they called hair, tied back in what I later learned was termed a ponytail, 2 forward-facing eyes, small nose, tiny mouth. She looked, and I cannot stress this enough, completely harmless. Pathetically so, actually. Professor Zelkarath, a distinguished Yalthrin with silver neural crowns, barely glanced up from his data slate. Ah yes, the human transfer student. Take any available station. The human. Cassidy nodded once. A simple vertical head movement they used for affirmation. Her voice when she spoke was quiet, almost musical. Thank you, Professor. She moved to an empty station in the back corner, the one nobody wanted because it was farthest from the primary holo projector. She did not complain, did not ask for a better spot, just went there, sat down, pulled out her personal data pad, started reviewing the course material. I exchanged a look with Quillros, my podmate, another Tharnax with particularly sharp mandibles and an even sharper wit. He clicked softly, the Tharnax equivalent of a snicker. A human, he whispered through our private comm frequency. In advanced placement classes, this should be entertaining. I clicked back in agreement. Give her 3 cycles, she will wash out. Brenthak, a hulking Krenthi from the upper atmospheric layers of Krenthis Major, leaned over. His species communicated through resonating chest cavities, creating deep rumbling sounds. Humans weak, humans soft. Why Institute accept? Nivara, a sleek Quillari with color-shifting scales, hissed quietly. Diversity quota, probably. The council has been pushing for more representation from the minor species. Political nonsense. We all nodded. Well, Those of us with heads capable of nodding did so. The others made their species equivalent gestures of agreement. The human girl, Cassidy, either did not hear us, or did not care. She kept her eyes on her datapad, occasionally making notes with a stylus, completely focused on the preliminary lecture material. Looking back now, I realize how catastrophically, horrifically, monumentally wrong we were about everything. But at that moment, at that precise moment, all I saw was an easy target. A weak little creature who had somehow stumbled into a place she clearly did not belong, and who would certainly not last long among real predators like us. Oh, the irony, the beautiful, terrible, blood-soaked irony. It started small, because that is how these things always start, right? Nothing too dramatic at first, just little tests to see how far we could push before she would break. Week 1, Quillrose hid her datapad. Simple, classic. She arrived at quantum mechanics class, reached for her equipment, found nothing. Her face did this tiny thing, barely noticeable, a slight tightening around her eyes, a small downward pull at the corners of her mouth. Then she just borrowed a spare from the equipment locker. No complaints, no tears, no running to the professor. Disappointing, honestly. Week 2, I may have accidentally, on purpose, knocked her tray in the communal feeding area. Her meal, some kind of plant-based protein synthesis thing humans apparently enjoyed, splattered across the floor in a spectacular display of wasted nutrition. Every species in that dining hall turned to look. The silence was, chef's kiss, absolutely perfect. Cassidy stood there for exactly 3 seconds, staring at the mess. Then she bent down, cleaned it up with sanitation cloths, disposed of everything properly, and left without eating. Did not even look at me, did not acknowledge what had happened. Is she defective? Mivara wondered aloud after that incident. Most species would show aggression response by now. Fight or flight instincts. Something. Brenthak rumbled thoughtfully. Maybe humans have no instincts. Maybe humans just broken. We laughed. Oh, how we laughed. The verbal mockery came next, naturally. Every time Cassidy answered a question in class, which she did correctly with irritating frequency, we made sure to add commentary. Quillrose was particularly creative with his insults. Amazing. The human actually knows basic thermodynamics. Should we give her a prize? Perhaps a shiny participation trophy? I am shocked her fragile little brain can handle multidimensional calculations. Truly shocking. Someone alert the council. The human has formed a complete sentence. This is historic. Cassidy never responded. She would just continue taking notes, continue studying, continue existing in her quiet, unobtrusive way that somehow made me angrier. Why would she not react? Why would she not give us the satisfaction of seeing her break? The other students, to their credit or shame, depending on your perspective, mostly stayed out of it. A few Korvaxians watched with distant, clinical interest, probably analyzing the social dynamics for some research paper. The Yalthrin ignored it entirely, too absorbed in their own intellectual superiority to care about the struggles of lesser beings. Some of the smaller species, the Plivians, the Wexti, they looked uncomfortable but never intervened. Professor Zelkorath, blessed with 4 brains and apparently 0 observational skills, noticed absolutely nothing. He droned on about cellular mitosis and genetic recombination while Cassidy sat in the back, isolated, targeted, and completely alone. By week 4 we escalated. Quillrose started physically blocking her path in corridors, forcing her to go around. Mivara spread rumors that humans carried diseases, that their very presence contaminated the air filtration systems. Brenthak used his considerable size to loom over her station during lab work, making it difficult for her to access equipment. And Cassidy, she adapted. She took longer routes. She arrived early to secure her equipment before we could interfere. She kept her head down and her mouth shut. She is scared, I declared one evening in our shared quarters. She knows she is outmatched. She is just trying to survive until she can transfer out or wash out completely. Quillrose clicked in agreement. Humans are prey species, obviously. They have no defensive capabilities, no strength, no weapons, no natural advantages whatsoever. Should we push harder? Mivara's scales shifted to an aggressive orange pattern. Make her leave faster. Do everyone a favor. I considered it, my mandibles clicking thoughtfully. One more test. Let us see how she handles real pressure. We planned something special for week 5. Something that would finally make the pathetic little human show some emotion. Something involving her personal research project. The one she had been working on for advanced bioengineering. The one she clearly cared about, judging by the extra hours she spent in the lab. Oh yes, we had a plan. A brilliant plan. A plan that would in retrospect prove to be the single dumbest decision any of us had ever made in our entire lives. But we did not know that yet. Not yet. The biolab during evening hours was supposed to be peaceful, quiet, a place for serious students to work on complex projects without distraction. The lighting was dimmed to conserve energy, casting long shadows across the rows of culture tanks, specimen containers and research stations, perfect for what we had planned. Cassidy's project, as best as I understood it, involved some kind of regenerative cellular therapy using modified Earth-based bacteria. She had been cultivating these samples for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of careful monitoring, precise adjustments, detailed documentation, the kind of work that took real dedication, real patience, which made it the perfect target. We waited until she left for the waste elimination facility. Humans, with their inefficient biological systems, needed to do that roughly every few hours, so predictable, so vulnerable. The moment she disappeared around the corner, we moved. Quilros reached her station first, his manipulator appendages already extended. This is it. This is what she has been obsessing over. He lifted the primary culture container, a sealed transparent cylinder filled with cloudy growth medium. Looks like contaminated wastewater. Just dump it, I urged, glancing toward the door. Make it look like an accident. She will never prove anything. Nivara was already accessing Cassidy's data logs, corrupting the backup files with a simple virus program. Her documentation is gone. Even if she restarts, she will have to begin from zero. Brenthak, ever the subtle one, simply grabbed the secondary sample containers and crushed them in his massive hands. The glass shattered with a satisfying crack. Liquid and bacterial cultures spilling across the work surface. We were laughing. Actually laughing. The sound echoed off the lab walls, high-pitched clicks from Quilros, my own mandible rattling amusement, Navara's hissing chuckle, Brenthak's rumbling vibrations.
Then we heard it.
Footsteps. Slow, measured, coming from the doorway. Cassidy stood there, backlit by the corridor lighting, her small frame creating barely any shadow at all. Her face was blank, completely blank. No anger, no tears, no shock. Just nothing. Oops, Quilros said, still holding the now empty primary culture container. Accident. Sorry, human. For exactly 5 seconds nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Well, those of us who breathed. Then Cassidy walked forward. Not rushed, not hesitant. Just walked. Her hands, those tiny soft-looking hands, hung loosely at her sides. Her eyes, those forward-facing predator eyes, I realized with sudden clarity, locked onto us with an intensity I had never seen before. You destroyed 6 weeks of work, she said quietly. Her voice had not changed. Still soft. Still almost musical. But something underneath it, something in the tone, made my thorax plates tighten instinctively. Yeah, we did, I said, trying to sound confident. What are you going to do about it, human? Run to the professor? Cry? File a complaint? She stopped 3 meters away, rolled her shoulders back, tilted her head slightly, creating a small popping sound from her neck vertebrae. No, Cassidy said simply. I am going to show you why my species survived. Then she moved. I need you to understand something. When I say she moved, I do not mean she walked quickly or ran. I mean she exploded into motion with a speed that should not have been possible for a creature with her muscle structure. One moment she was standing still, the next moment she was airborne, launching herself at Quilros with both legs extended in what I later learned was called a drop kick. Her feet connected with his thorax with a force that sent him crashing backward into a storage cabinet. The metal crumpled. Quilros's chitin plating cracked audibly. Before he even hit the ground, she was already transitioning, landing in a roll, coming up next to Mavara. Her small fist, and it looked so small, so harmless, drove upward into the soft tissue under Mavara's jaw. The Quillari's scales flashed from orange to white, the color of extreme pain, and she collapsed, choking, her respiratory system temporarily paralyzed. Brenthak roared, swinging one massive arm toward the human. She ducked under it, so smoothly it looked choreographed, and drove her elbow into his primary knee joint. Something snapped, not cracked, snapped, like dry wood breaking. The Krenthe, who massed at least 4 times what Cassidy did, went down howling. That left me. I backed up, mandibles clicking in what was no longer amusement but alarm. Wait, we can talk about this, we can. Cassidy grabbed my manipulator appendage, the one I had raised offensively, and twisted. Pain exploded through my neural network as the joint bent in a direction it absolutely was not designed to go. I clicked in agony, trying to pull away, but her grip was like a magnetic clamp. Her other hand came up, grabbed the side of my head, and slammed it down onto the lab table. Once, twice, 3 times, my vision blurred. I tasted my own hemolymph, that coppery blue fluid that definitely should have stayed inside my body. She leaned close, her face centimeters from mine. Blood, my blood, spattered across her cheek. Her breathing was elevated but controlled. Her eyes, those forward-facing hunter eyes, showed no rage, no satisfaction, just calculation. I held back for 5 weeks, Cassidy whispered. I was polite, I was patient, I followed every rule, every protocol, every standard of civilized behavior. Do you know why? I could not answer, could not even click properly. Because that is what we do, she continued. We humans. We restrain ourselves. We suppress millions of years of evolution that made us the apex predators of a death world. We pretend to be civilized. We pretend to be safe. She released me, and I collapsed, legs unable to support my weight. Cassidy stood over us, over all 4 of us, breathing steadily, her hands still clenched into fists. Around us, the biolab was destroyed, equipment shattered, fluids leaking, and 4 of the Institute's strongest students lay broken and bleeding on the floor. But you kept pushing, she said softly, so I stopped pretending. Then she walked to the emergency communication panel and calmly, casually pressed the medical emergency button. 4 students injured in Biolab 7, she said into the comm. Please send medical response team. I will be waiting here. She sat down on an undamaged stool, pulled out her data pad from her pocket, apparently it had been with her the whole time, and began documenting the incident with clinical precision. I lay there, barely conscious, staring at this tiny creature who had just dismantled us like we were malfunctioning equipment, and for the first time in my life, I understood what terror actually felt like. The medical bay at the Galactic Institute was equipped to handle injuries from approximately 400 different species. State-of-the-art regeneration chambers, cellular reconstruction matrices, advanced pain suppression fields, the works. On any given day, maybe 2 or 3 students needed treatment for minor lab accidents or recreational sports injuries. That night, the staff treated 4 critical cases simultaneously, and honestly, they were not prepared for the sheer variety of damage. Quilros had 3 cracked thorax plates, internal fluid leakage, and a concussion equivalent that left him confused about which planet he was on. Navarra could not speak for 2 days because of the trauma to her vocal resonance chamber. Brenthak, the massive Krenthi who could supposedly bend steel support beams, had a shattered knee joint that required complete surgical reconstruction, and me, fractured skull plating, broken manipulator appendage, damaged optical sensor, and enough internal bleeding to fill a small container. All of this from a single human juvenile female weighing maybe 50 kilograms at most. The medical staff kept asking the same question. What attacked you? What kind of creature did this? When we said it was Cassidy Vale, the human transfer student, they actually laughed. Then they checked the security footage. Then they stopped laughing. The review took place 3 days later in Administrator Corfax's office, a vast space overlooking the main campus. Corfax himself was a Yalthran, elderly, distinguished, with silver neural crowns that indicated centuries of accumulated knowledge. Professor Zelkorath was there too, all 4 of his brains presumably working overtime to process what had happened. They made us watch it. Every second. Every brutal, efficient, terrifying second. On the holo display we saw ourselves destroy Cassidy's research, saw ourselves laughing, then we watched her enter, watched her go from 0 to violence in the span of a heartbeat. The footage showed details I had missed during the actual fight, how she positioned her body weight, how she targeted specific vulnerable points on each of our anatomies, how she maintained situational awareness of all 4 opponents simultaneously. It looked, and I hate admitting this, it looked like art, violent, bone-breaking art, but art nonetheless. Do any of you know what a death world is? Professor Zelkorath asked quietly after the footage ended. We did not answer. Mostly because our injuries still made communication difficult. A death world, he continued, is a planet classified as Category 9 or higher on the Hostile Environment Index. Extreme weather, aggressive fauna, limited resources, evolutionary pressure, so intense that only the most adaptable, most resilient, most aggressive species survive. Earth, The human homeworld is classified as Category 12. 12. That could not be right. Garden worlds maxed out at 7. Zelkorath pulled up a new holo display, this one showing Earth. It looked pleasant, blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. 70% of the surface is salt water that they cannot drink without processing. Weather patterns include hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, earthquakes. The planet hosts millions of species, many of which can kill a human with venom, claws, teeth, or sheer mass. They have predators that can smell blood from 5 kilometers away. They have microscopic organisms that can shut down their organs in hours. Another image appeared. A human ancestor, something called Homo erectus. Humans evolved on this world over millions of years. They survived not through natural armor, not through venom, not through size or strength. They survived through persistence. Persistence. Mivara croaked, her voice finally returning. Persistence hunting, Zelkorath explained. Humans can run for hours, days even. Their endurance is unmatched in the galactic community. They would chase prey until the animal literally collapsed from exhaustion. They can heal from injuries that would kill most species. They can go days without food, weeks without full nutrition. They can adapt to nearly any environment, any climate, any situation. He pulled up another image. Human soldiers, human athletes, human rescue workers. They also possess something unusual, the ability to consciously override their own survival instincts. They call it adrenaline response. In moments of extreme stress or danger, their bodies flood with hormones that increase strength, speed, pain tolerance, and aggression. A human in this state can perform feats that seem impossible based on their baseline biology. Brenthak rumbled weakly. She was in this state? Actually no, Zelkorath said. According to her biometric data from her student health monitor, Cassidy Vale never entered full adrenaline response. Her heart rate elevated to only 120 beats per minute. For a human in combat, that is practically calm. The silence in that room was absolute. You were bullying, Zelkorath continued, his tone cold. A member of a species that evolved to chase down and kill prey over marathon distances. A species that survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and their own internal conflicts. A species classified as a Category 2 threat in the Galactic Security Index. Despite their friendly diplomatic posture. Category 2? I managed to click. That is the same level as the Kresh Dominion, the conquest species. Correct, Corfax interjected. Humans are statistically the third most dangerous species in the known galaxy. They choose not to act like it, which is why most people forget, but make no mistake. They are apex predators pretending to be harmless. And you four decided to torment one of their young. At that moment the door opened. Cassidy walked in, escorted by a security officer. She looked normal. Completely normal. Her hair was neatly tied back. Her clothing was clean. Her face showed no evidence of the violence she had inflicted. She nodded politely to the administrators. You wanted to see me? Corfax gestured to a seat. Miss Vale, we have reviewed the incident. We need your statement. Cassidy sat, folded her hands in her lap, and looked directly at us. Not with anger. Not with smugness. Just, look, they destroyed my research project, she said simply. 6 weeks of work. I asked them to stop the harassment multiple times through proper channels. Nothing changed. When they destroyed my project, I defended myself. I used appropriate force to neutralize the threat. I immediately called for medical assistance. I cooperated fully with security. That is my statement. Appropriate force. Quilros clicked incredulously. You nearly killed us. Cassidy's expression did not change. No. If I wanted to kill you, you would be dead. I broke some bones. I caused temporary pain. You will all recover fully within weeks. That is restraint, not attempted murder. She stood, nodded to the administrators again and walked toward the door. But before leaving she paused and looked back at us one final time. I came here to learn, Cassidy said quietly. I wanted to make friends. I wanted to exchange knowledge and culture. I wanted to prove that humans could integrate peacefully into galactic society. You made that impossible. So I showed you the alternative, the thing we spend every single day trying not to be. She left. The door closed behind her with a soft hiss. And we sat there, 4 students who thought we were predators, realizing we had been tormenting something far worse. We had been bullying a human. And we were extraordinarily lucky to be alive. The thing about reputation is that it spreads faster than a quantum entanglement signal. and with significantly less accuracy, but in this case, every single detail was painfully horrifyingly true. By the next morning cycle, every student at the Galactic Institute knew what had happened. Not the sanitized official version. Oh no. They knew the real story. 4 advanced students, all from physically imposing species, all considered tough by any reasonable standard, put in the medical bay by one human girl who barely came up to their chest plates. The whispers started immediately. I returned to classes after a week of regeneration therapy, my manipulator appendage still in a stabilization brace, my skull plating held together with bioadhesive mesh. The moment I entered the advanced quantum mechanics lecture hall, conversation stopped. Every single student turned to look at me, not with sympathy, not with concern, with something else entirely. Fear? No. Awareness. Closer. It was the look you give someone who survived an encounter with something dangerous, the kind of look that says, you are now contaminated by proximity to a predator, and we are not sure if that makes you dangerous too or just marked for further culling. Quilros, Brenthak, and Mivara had similar experiences. We had gone from respected, if not exactly liked, members of the social hierarchy, to pariahs in the span of 72 hours. Nobody wanted to associate with the idiots who picked a fight with a Deathworlder and lost. But the really interesting change, the one that actually mattered, was how everyone treated Cassidy. She walked through the corridors now and students moved. Not, obviously, not dramatically, but they moved. They gave her space. They did not block her path. They did not crowd her station in the labs. The Korvaxians, those telepathic snobs who previously ignored her completely, now nodded respectfully when she passed. The Yalthrin actually engaged her in academic discussions, genuine ones, treating her insights with the same consideration they gave their own species. The Pluvians, those small nervous creatures who had watched our bullying campaign without intervening and now practically worshipped her. I overheard one of them talking to his podmate in the feeding area. She protected herself without killing them. The Plivian chittered excitedly. She showed perfect control, perfect restraint. That is true strength, not the posturing of insecure bullies. Ouch. Accurate, but ouch. Professor Zelkorath, suddenly very aware of the harassment that had occurred literally under his 4 noses, implemented new protocols, mandatory species integration seminars, cultural sensitivity training, a whole section of advanced xenobiology now dedicated specifically to Deathworld species and their unique evolutionary adaptation. The first lecture after my return focused entirely on humans. Zelkorath displayed a rotating hollow model of human anatomy while Cassidy sat in her usual back corner seat calmly taking notes as if the entire lecture was not about her species. The human skeletal structure contains 206 bones, Zelkorath explained, which seems fragile compared to chitinous species or crystalline-based life forms. However, human bones can heal from fractures, often becoming stronger at the breakpoint. Their muscular system operates on a limit system. The brain deliberately restricts muscle fiber activation to approximately 30% of maximum capacity during normal activity to prevent self-injury. A Korvaxian student raised a thought tendril. What happens when this limit is removed? Hysterical strength, Zelkorath replied. In extreme situations, humans can access up to 100% of their muscular capacity. There are documented cases of human females lifting ground vehicles off trapped offspring, human males breaking through reinforced barriers to escape danger. The cost is severe tissue damage, but in survival situations they can and will do it. I looked at Cassidy. She had not even accessed hysterical strength when she demolished us. That was just normal human capability. Terrifying. Additionally, Zelkorath continued, humans possess remarkable pattern recognition, spatial reasoning, and threat assessment capabilities. Their forward-facing eyes provide exceptional depth perception. Their hands, with opposable thumbs and sensitive nerve endings, can manipulate objects with extraordinary precision. They can throw projectiles with accuracy unmatched in the animal kingdom, a skill developed for hunting. Mivara, her voice still raspy, hissed a question. Why are they in the galactic community? Why do we allow them citizenship if they are so dangerous? Zelkorath's neural crowns flickered. Because humans are also capable of remarkable compassion, creativity, and cooperation. They form bonds across species lines more easily than most civilizations. They create art, music, literature that resonates emotionally with beings who have completely different neural structures. They are simultaneously the most dangerous and most empathetic species we have encountered. That duality is what makes them so Complicated. The lecture continued for another hour, covering human history, their wars, yes plural, multiple wars, some lasting years or even decades, their exploration drives, their social structures, their pack bonding tendencies. By the end, every student in that hall understood one critical fact: humans were not weak, they were restrained. There was a massive difference, and we had failed to recognize it until way too late. After class, I did something I had been avoiding for 2 weeks. I approached Cassidy. She was packing her datapad, preparing to leave for her next lecture. When she noticed me standing there, she did not flinch, did not tense, just looked up with those calm, forward-facing eyes and waited. I started, then stopped. What do you say? How do you apologize for systematic harassment? How do you make amends for destroyed research and deliberate cruelty? I want to apologize. Cassidy tilted her head slightly, a gesture I now recognized as curiosity rather than submission. Okay. I was wrong, I continued, forcing the words out through mandibles that wanted to click nervously. We were wrong. We targeted you because we thought you were weak. I thought, that your species was inferior. I did not understand. I did not bother to learn. No, Cassidy agreed simply. You did not. I destroyed your research. 6 weeks of work. I do not know how to make that right. She finished packing her materials, stood and looked at me properly. We were nearly the same height, which I had somehow never noticed before. You cannot make it right, Vectrin. What is done is done. The samples are destroyed. The data is corrupted. I have to start over completely. Shame, actual genuine shame, flooded through my system. I am sorry. I know, Cassidy said. Then, unexpectedly, her mouth curved slightly upward at the corners. A smile, I realized. A small one. You know what the interesting thing is? In human culture, we have a saying: what does not kill you, makes you stronger. You four gave me an opportunity to demonstrate something important to the entire institute, that humans can defend themselves, that we will not tolerate abuse indefinitely, that restraint is a choice, not a weakness. She started walking toward the exit, then paused and looked back. Your apology is noted, Vectrin. Whether it is accepted depends entirely on what you do next. Actions matter more than words. Remember that. Then she left, and I stood there in the empty lecture hall processing what had just happened. Cassidy Vale had not forgiven me, but she had not dismissed me either. She had given me, what did humans call it, a second chance. The question was, what would I do with it? 3 months later, the Galactic Institute looked essentially the same on the surface. Same floating platforms, same crystalline towers, same pretentious architecture screening intellectual superiority at every opportunity, but underneath, underneath everything had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The cafeteria, for instance. Previously, species segregated themselves by dietary compatibility and social hierarchy. Corvaxians with Corvaxians, Yalthrin with Yalthrin, Tharnax with Tharnax. You get the idea. Now scattered throughout the vast dining space, you could see mixed groups, a human student, not Cassidy, but another one who had arrived after the incident, sitting with Plivians and Quillari, discussing atmospheric composition formulas, a Krenthi sharing a table with 2 humans engaged in what appeared to be a heated but friendly debate about structural engineering principles. The shift was not universal, change never is, but it was noticeable. I found myself at one of these mixed tables picking at a nutrient paste specifically formulated for Tharnax biology, while across from me sat Cassidy Vale consuming something she called a sandwich, which appeared to be plant matter and protein compressed between 2 sections of baked grain product. How we got here, to this improbable friendship, or at least friendly acquaintanceship, was a journey that took those entire 3 months. After my initial apology, I made a decision. Not a comfortable one, but a necessary one. I started actually learning about humans instead of assuming. I accessed their cultural databases, with proper permissions of course. I read their history. I watched their entertainment media, which was violent and emotional and strangely compelling. I studied their biology, their psychology, their social structure, and I started, carefully, respectfully, attempting to make amends. Small things at first. When I noticed Cassidy struggling to reach equipment on a high shelf, equipment designed for taller species, I retrieved it without comment. When I overheard students spreading the same kind of malicious rumors we had started, I corrected them publicly. When Brenthak, still bitter about his reconstructed knee, made a threatening gesture toward Cassidy in the hallway, I stepped between them and made it very clear that anyone who harassed her would deal with me first. The irony was not lost on anyone, least of all myself. Quilros eventually joined my efforts, motivated partly by genuine remorse and partly by the realization that being known as the idiot who got destroyed by a human was not the legacy he wanted. Nivara took longer, her pride wounded more deeply, but eventually she too came around. Brinthak, stubborn to the end, transferred to a different institution entirely. Some people cannot move past their own humiliation. The institute administration meanwhile implemented sweeping changes. New students now received comprehensive briefings on Deathworld species during orientation. Professor Zelkorath developed an entire elective course called Dangerous Species Integration and Coexistence, which became one of the most popular offerings in the curriculum. Security protocols were updated to include specific response procedures for incidents involving high-threat species, and humans, all 12 of them now attending the institute, suddenly found themselves treated with a respect that bordered on cautious reverence. "It is weird, honestly," Cassidy said, taking a bite of her sandwich. "Back home on Earth I was just normal. Average student. Average athlete. Nothing special. Here, everyone acts like I am some kind of ticking explosive device." "You did hospitalize 4 students in approximately 90 seconds, I pointed out, mandibles clicking with what I hoped came across as humor rather than residual trauma. "Fair point," she conceded. "But that is the thing, right? Any human could have done what I did. I am not exceptional by human standards. I am a 17-year-old girl who plays soccer on weekends and struggles with calculus. The fact that this," she gestured vaguely at herself, "is terrifying to other species says more about them than it does about me." A Yalthran student passing our table overheard and paused. "If you are not exceptional, what would an exceptional human be capable of?" Cassidy considered the question seriously. "Well, humans have special forces soldiers who train for years in combat techniques. We have martial artists who dedicate their entire lives to fighting systems. We have athletes who can run 100 meters in under 10 seconds or lift twice their body weight over their heads. We have persistence hunters who can track prey for days across hostile terrain. So, an exceptional human in a fight. You really do not want to find out." The Yalthran's neural crowns flickered rapidly, processing this information, and he hurried away looking distinctly uncomfortable. I clicked in amusement. "You enjoy unsettling people now." "A little," Cassidy admitted with that small smile. "Is that bad? After months of being treated like I was fragile, there is something satisfying about people finally understanding that I am not."
"It is not bad," I said. "It is..."
"What is the human word? Earned." We ate in companionable silence for a moment. Around us the cafeteria buzzed with multilingual conversation, a symphony of clicks, hisses, rumbles, whistles, and spoken language. "Can I ask you something?" I ventured carefully. "That day in the biolab, you said you had been holding back, that you were restraining yourself. Was that... How difficult was that for you?" "The restraint, I mean." Cassidy set down her sandwich and looked at me directly. "Do you want the comfortable answer or the honest one?" "Honest. Always honest." She nodded slowly. "It was not difficult at all, Vectung. That is what scares people when they really think about it. Humans are socialized from childhood to control our aggressive impulses. We learn to use words instead of fists. We learn to walk away from confrontation. We learn to suppress the instincts that kept our ancestors alive in a world full of things that wanted to eat them. By the time we reach adulthood, restraint is not hard. It is automatic. It is the default setting." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "What happened in the biolab? That was not me losing control. That was me making a conscious, deliberate choice to stop restraining myself. I assessed the threat. I determined that non-violent options had been exhausted. I calculated the appropriate level of force needed to neutralize 4 opponents of various species with different vulnerabilities, and I executed that plan. The entire process, from decision to action, took maybe 2 seconds. The implications of that statement settled over me like a heavy blanket. So when you fight, you're still in control. Still thinking." "Always," Cassidy confirmed. "Adrenaline helps. Sure. Faster reactions, increased strength, reduced pain perception. But I never stopped thinking. I knew where each of you were. I knew which strikes would disable versus which would kill. I chose disable. Every single hit was intentional." "That is horrifying," I said quietly. "Yes," she agreed. "It is. That is why most humans spend their entire lives never letting anyone see that side of themselves. We want to be the friendly, creative, compassionate species. We want to build things and explore and make friends across the galaxy, but the capacity for violence is always there, Just waiting. We are all carrying around the legacy of millions of years of evolution on a death world, and we mostly just choose not to use it. A plebeian student approached our table nervously, clutching a datapad. Excuse me, Cassidy. I have a question about the quantum entanglement problem set. Could you, if you have time, would you be willing to, Sure, Cassidy said warmly, her entire demeanor shifting to something softer, more approachable. Sit down. Let me see what you are working on. The plebeian sat, visibly relieved, and they began discussing complex physics while I observed. This was the duality Professor Zulkorath had mentioned. One moment, Cassidy was explaining how she could efficiently disable multiple opponents. The next, she was patiently helping a struggling student understand particle wave functions, her voice gentle and encouraging. Humans, I realized, were not contradictions. They were balances, capable of extraordinary violence and extraordinary kindness, often simultaneously. Later that evening, I found myself in the Institute's observation deck, a transparent dome offering views of the surrounding nebula. Cassidy was there too. Apparently she came here often, staring out at the stars. Beautiful, is it not? I said, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. Yeah, she agreed. Makes you think about how small we all are. How much we do not know yet. Can I ask one more question? It is personal. Go ahead. Do you regret coming here? After everything that happened, do you wish you had stayed on Earth? Cassidy was quiet for a long moment, her reflection visible in the transparent dome surface. No, she finally said. What happened was terrible, but it was also necessary. Someone needed to show the galactic community that humans are not pushovers, that we will defend ourselves. That kindness should not be mistaken for weakness. I just wish it had not had to be so violent. For what it is worth, I said, I am glad you came. I am glad you stayed. And I am genuinely grateful for the opportunity to learn from my mistakes. Not everyone gets that chance. She smiled, a real one this time, reaching her eyes. You know, Vectrin, 3 months ago I would not have believed I would ever have a civil conversation with you, much less consider you something like a friend. Friend, the concept startled me. Maybe friend is too strong, she amended. But ally, someone who learned and changed? Yeah, that works. We stood there together, a Tharnax and a human, looking out at the infinite expanse of space, at the countless worlds and species and possibilities that awaited, and I thought about how the Galactic Institute had a new unofficial motto now, one that spread to other institutions, other planets, other civilizations. Never underestimate a human. Never assume restraint means inability. Never mistake their kindness for weakness. Because humans are deathworlders pretending to be civilized, and if you push them hard enough, long enough, they will stop pretending. We learned that lesson the hard way. The whole galaxy was learning it now. And honestly, that was probably a good thing. For everyone involved. Especially for idiots like us who needed to learn respect before we encountered something that would not show the restraint Cassidy had. Something that would not stop at broken bones. Something that would teach us the lesson permanently. We were lucky. Extraordinarily, impossibly lucky. And I would never ever forget it.